And now the Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia, as well as the Catholic bishops, through their pastoral letters, have all validated the various opposition political parties' repeated warnings to the nation about flagrant and incessant acts of violation of the Constitution and the growing dictatorship, emasculation of the institutions of state that are meant to protect the rights of the citizens. That has been necessitated by the Hakainde Hichilema single sourcing practice, especially when dealing with key expenses on which the welfare of the nation heavily relies. What is ironic is that the oversight institutions have elected silence in the face of national pillage. The donor agencies have equally opted to remain mute, even in the face of blatant abuse of public office orchestrated by those at the apex of public office. We would like to ask the Anti-Corruption Commission to visit Zamra and look at the Egypt transaction so that they notify the nation why the correct procedure was not followed in that multi-million-dollar transaction. The nation deserves to know why Zamra went ahead to approve the contract and delivery of drugs from Egypt in the absence of a dossier. The scandal at Zamra today will make Honey Bee look like a storm in a cup. As the Anti-Corruption Commission carries out their investigation, we would like them to extend that to ZAMSA and let the nation know why the Egyptian deal was only closed after the Egyptian transaction was only finalized after the ZAMSA Director General was hounded out. This is not just grand corruption, but also puts the lives of many Zambians at risk.
That's right.
Owing to the procuring of drugs that have not been tested and validated by experts, but instead that was done by a DG who himself was an interested party. 2. Abduction of citizens' rights. We have seen an increase in abduction of citizens, especially those with a political inclination, who end up being locked up without appearing before the courts of law beyond the stipulated period. This conduct has potential to backfire, as it is sowing retributive seeds and may result in a perpetuation of this treatment once government changes in 2026. While all efforts are being made by the opposition to reconcile the nation, the head of state has remained restrained and is not willing to address the growing tribal divide that is fast threatening the peace that this country has always enjoyed since 24th October 1964. Human rights are guaranteed in the Republican Constitution, and the expectation is that government must do everything to ensure that the rights of citizens are not just upheld but also guaranteed. These abuses of the law and citizens are being made in full view of the donor community, who continue to praise government even when all the fundamentals point in the direction of a distressed and falling state. We demand that the president starts walking the talk and stops the rhetoric of reading inclusive speeches while his action and instructions are meant to diminish political space.
That's right.
Meddling in opposition parties. It is an act of grave cowardice for the ruling party to start meddling in the internal affairs of opposition parties. What started with the DP and the NDC, moved to the CF, has now gone to the PF, and who knows what party is next. Might be Golden Party.
Shameful.
All these actions are aimed at weakening the opposition in Zambia, as they do not want a strong opposition that can stand up to them. For the first time in this country's history, we are having senior military personnel being drafted to participate in covert activities that are intended to disenfranchise the opposition. We want to remind civil servants and the men and women in uniform who are being drafted into covert operations to resist such activities. We would like to warn those pushing such an agenda that we know what is happening and will not hesitate to hold you personally accountable at the right time. It is apparent that this takeover of parties was made possible owing to the apparent lack of unity among opposition leaders, as well as other interest groups and the citizens not taking a position to speak out in favor of democracy. We now have the Patriotic Front saga, where a parallel leadership has been established that is intended to usurp authority of the only line of defense in the National Assembly in their way to turn Zambia into a one-party state using an emasculated parliament and a judiciary that has proven to be highly conflicted and compromised. We have also seen arrests of several opposition leaders on trumped-up charges of espionage, arising from them expressing their views in an interview with a Zimbabwean journalist. Views that reflect their right to free speech. We want to state for the record that even for a vindictive and self-righteous person, as this leader is, the charge of espionage is inconceivable and will cause much shame to this country. But it will only help fuel the resolve for the opposition to remain united in fighting the cause for democracy.
That's right.
Such actions are a clear evidence of how Zambia today has been auctioned by Mr. Hakainde Hichilema to foreign commercial interests. We want to tell the Zambian people that it is not Mr. Hichilema who's making some of these decisions. It is his foreign funders who are writing the script, and the only thing he's doing is to ask them how high he should jump. We know what is going on. We even know his Caucasian friends who privately boast of how they control him and by default running the country. As a matter of fact, one of these friends of the president has been boasting of having ordered for the arrest of Mr. Given Lubinda, Dr. Fred Membe, Mr. Ratho Nakachinda, and Mr. Emmanuel Mwamba for various charges resulting from the Zimbabwean documentary that exposed the Zambian government of meddling in that country's internal affairs at the behest of his sponsors. We would like to remind Mr. Hichilema that we will not stand by and allow him to plunge this nation into a cesspool of anarchy simply because of his insatiable appetite for extrajudicial power. His path of victimization has potential to plunging the country into a bloodbath. And it is for this reason that we would like to appeal to his remaining thread of consciousness and ask him to take some time and reflect on the onerous responsibility that comes with the position of president. He is not the first commander-in-chief that this country has had, and he will certainly not be the last.
Yes.
But so far he has proven to be the first to show blatant abuse of authority to a point where people are scared of expressing themselves for fear of state-sponsored victimization. 4. The Electoral Commission of Zambia, ECZ. Whereas we have been insisting that the position of Chief Electoral Officer be filled, we are, however, concerned with the choice of the candidate that has been selected to take over such a strategic institution. We are aware that the newly recruited Chief Electoral Officer was relieved of his duties as the ECZ for gross misconduct that involved electoral malpractice during the 2016 general elections. We are at a loss as to how the very person who was dismissed for seeking to manipulate election results in favor of the then opposition UPND would today be expected to act with impartiality. It is our founded view that a responsible government would not employ one with such a tainted professional background unless you would like to benefit from their devious attributes and skills. And we've got nothing personal with the person that has been appointed there. It's just a question of principle.
That's true.
What is worse is that the Hakainde government has opted to have a team of highly compromised individuals at the helm of this very important institution. We would have expected that Mr. Hichilema would make every effort to ensure that ECZ is rid of any tribal inclination or leaning. Alas, that opportunity has been missed, as ECZ is not just tribally inclined to UPND, but as non-members of UPND placed in strategic position, including those of commissioners as well as chairperson. Would however like to remind the President that at the end of it all, the will of the people will prevail.
That's right.
No amount of machination will prevail over the resolve for you to vacate office come 2026. The people have resolved, and no matter what you do, it will not work. When you see people like ourselves who are not agreeing on several things, today agreeing to sit like this, na wakavimba. Ili bebede. We would also like to caution those working for the Electoral Commission of Zambia that the responsibility you bear be executed with integrity and dignity, regardless of the pressure that is exerted on you. Resolve to do the right thing at all costs, and you will not have to worry about being taken to task after the 2026 elections when the UPND is kicked out of office. 5. Freedom of information. We are once again at a loss as to why government seems to have developed inertia in allowing the Freedom of Information Bill to be tabled on the floor of Parliament. We acknowledge that it is now before the floor of Parliament, but we would want this process speeded up. Besides the many priorities to have the Freedom of Information enacted, this issue still remains unaddressed and no tangible action has been taken to ensure closure. The result of government's failure to enact the Freedom of Information Bill has been the continued harassment of journalists for objective coverage. We have seen journalists and media houses threatened under frivolous charges simply because of the absence of the protection they seek through the Freedom of Information Act. It is important that government is given the necessary safeguard by the Fourth Estate. The continued resistance and delay to enact the Freedom of Information Bill is a clear abrogation of freedom of information, and it goes against the values of a democratic state such as Zambia that is supposed to guarantee the safety of its citizens, including members of the Fourth Estate. The demand that the President makes haste to ensure that he meets his campaign promise by seeing through the enactment of the Freedom of Information Bill, otherwise we are left with no option but to speculate that their failure to do so is intended to cover their corrupt practices. 6. The executive's control of constitutional offices. We are concerned with the level of control that the executive is exercising over oversight institutions that are meant to be first and second lines of defense, especially in the fight against corruption, has rendered these institutions to be ineffective, especially as it relates to fighting corruption of those that are currently serving in government. President Hakainde Hichilema does not seem to see anything wrong with that, and one can only be left to speculate if he's doing so as a result of himself being a beneficiary, as he cannot be investigated by those who feel they are part of the inner circle. The continued housing of key institutions such as the Drug Enforcement Commission and the Anti-Corruption Commission under the Office of the President has made a mockery of the fight against corruption. These institutions are now being used as instruments of frustrating opposition leaders and perceived enemies of those in the ruling UPND or the executive. To the Zambian people, we ask you to demonstrate that indomitable Zambian spirit of love for country, love for one another, unity in diversity, and unwavering belief in constitutionalism and multi-party democracy. Zambians must realize what is at the heart of the battle before us: the quest to defend our democracy. This UPND government represents the biggest existential threat to the continued existence of Zambia as we know it. If they are allowed to continue along this trajectory, our nation will become a failed state. We now call upon you all, our gallant men and women, to also unite, to put aside any artificial differences being promoted by this divisive government, and come on board and stand with us as we seek to push back the hand of repression and division. We ask you to voice out against the evident ills that are being perpetrated with impunity. You must resolve to reject the one-party state that they are pushing by obliterating the opposition and buying those that are willing to sell their souls for some pieces of silver. Finally, to us as opposition political leaders, we must resolve to send a very strong message to Mr. Hakainde Hichilema that we are ready for him. And no matter what they try, our resolve is to liberate Zambia economically, politically, and intellectually.
That's right.
We shall remain united around the need to liberate our country from funders and supporters of the UPND government who see it as their birthright to amass African wealth at the expense of majority Africans who continue to wallow in abject poverty. We must remain resolved, colleagues, to unite and confront the UPND and their foreign destructive backers in defense of our constitution. Our sovereign rights as citizens, our political organizations, our hard-won multi-party democracy, and God-given national worth, which Mr. Hakainde Hichilema and his team want to plunder through shell corporations and proxy entities. To this effect, we are announcing the beginning of a series of actions and activities enshrined in the Constitution of this Republic in exercise of our right to defend our democracy. We'll be announcing a detailed program of activities that is intended to let the citizens understand that indeed we were sold a lie. We thank you most sincerely, and may God bless our nation, and may God bless each one of us. We thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a powerful presentation of the opposition political party's quest to defend our democracy with a call on opposition political party leaders to unite. Indeed, the Bible says, "Behold, how good and pleasant it is for presidents to dwell together in unity." At this particular time, I would like to invite a few questions from the media. Kindly introduce yourself and the media you are coming from and pose that question. And in the meantime, the political party presidents present here are signing this joint statement that has been read by President Harry Kalaba. I would like to invite the first set of 3 questions. Do we have any questions from the media? I can see a hand there. Kindly introduce yourself and you may proceed with your question.
I'm Kapula Afias from Camnet TV. I would want to find out the specific, and maybe you can shed light on what activities we want to embark on in this process.
Can you take that one?
No.
Do we have another question?
Take it.
Yes, I can see a hand here.
My name is Margaret Kandwa. I would like to find out the concurrent press briefing that you held with opposition political parties. You did request of the nation of Indaba. Did that take place? And if it has not yet taken place, what is it that you have done? Because it has been quite some time from the time that you did request for the nation of Indaba.
On the national Indaba, may I have the last set of 3 questions before they are responded to? Is there another hand? Okay, I can see a hand there.
My question is, what do you think are the consequences that the UPNG government will face if they don't unite with the opposition parties?
Okay.
All right, so thank you very much for those questions. I'll start with Anvisha Obi answering with the question concerning the activities that we intend to take. I think that the speech was very clear that we shall be announcing going forward. It's not something that we want to share today because we want this speech and what was contained in that speech to sink in. Yes. So we don't want to crowd the space. And within a short while, we shall be getting back to you with regard to what we shall be doing. And maybe just very quickly, the answer, the question about what happens if the UPND does not unite with the opposition. It's not so much the UPND uniting with the opposition as in beginning to do what is expected of them. I think that's probably the question we should have been asking. What happens if they don't? The answer is very, very clear. 2026.
There's a question that has been asked whether the national Indaba that we called for has taken place. Surely if it did take place, you would have known about it, or at the very least heard about it. But you must understand that in calling for that national Indaba, as opposition leaders, we have realized that together with the UPND, we have one common goal to achieve. And that goal is developing this country, kicking out poverty, getting rid of this oppression on citizens and opposition leaders. And it is in that Indara that such resolutions could have been made. But the fact that it has not been called, our friends have not even responded to that letter, shows that they are not concerned about the welfare of this country and of each one of you seated here. If they were, they would have quickly said, yes, let's come together and find solutions to what is plaguing this country.
Yes.
The kwacha is free falling against the dollar. What is the solution? People are crying about mini meal, sleeping hungry. What is the solution? For them, their only interest is to deliver what they are calling development on two things. Delivering desks to schools and giving CDFs to their own relatives and cadres. That is not the development we want. And we'll continue pressing until our demands are met. If not, all of you should even be able to say, we want to call for fresh elections now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can we have a set of last questions? Okay.
Good morning, panelists. My name is Mishek Nirongo. I'll be asking this question not as a journalist, but as a Pan-Africanist. I'm sure honorables there have asked this question over and over. There's an allegation that you don't need a rocket scientist to prove that democracy hasn't brought any development to Africa. Zambia is not an exception. You know, with democracy, there is the ruling party, the opposition. So the allegation is that there's always this division. Do you think there's an alternative governance system that can bring development to Africa as well as Zambia? For example, in UK, there's the Queen, and yeah, there's a monarch there, but it's developed. I don't think that's democracy there, you know. So, looking at democracy, let's go a spade by spade. Democracy hasn't brought development to Zambia.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any alternative governance system?
Thank you.
Yes.
Can we have members of the press to ask simple, straight, and precise questions? Yes, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Let me just take a stance. Good morning. My name is Emmanuel Lungu from Zambia Monitor. So my question regards what is currently going on in the country, the political war, verbal war that is going on, especially the one that is extended by Patriotic Front towards the rest of the parties. We've seen that UPND, or the ruling party rather, is trying by all means, or rather they are saying or stating that they're doing everything they can within their power to make these issues resolve themselves. But in your state as political parties, do you think the ruling party is doing enough? And if not, what are your suggestions? Thank you.
Okay, I saw a hand there. Okay, you, madam.
Good morning. My name is My question is, as you convene as opposition political parties, have you tried to also call the PF to the table? This one being they have the majority in the parliament, and I think they also have the momentum around the country. So I would like to find out if you have taken a step to make a resolve to invite the Patriotic Front as a major opposition party to the table. Thank you.
Maybe we can respond to the questions that have been, I've seen Madam President Savoy Mbwela.
Okay, I stand to answer the first question, but I'll touch on the last question. I'm sure you know that every time we have these pressers, the PF are always with us. They're a big part of us, you know, but when we should have had this presser last week, and the main topic of discussion was actually the PF, because of what was happening last week with the Racial Society, just the whole thing, the homing out with the PF. Yes. But you know, with the UPND, they do wrong things at rapid speed. By the time we change the date to today, a lot of bad things have happened in such a short period of time. But still, the decision was still made to say that the PF should not be part of this particular presser. But I'm sure I've seen that the Deputy Media Director, Mr. Edwin Ikweka, is here. Yeah. So, Yeah, so definitely, don't worry about that one. So the first question, I'll touch on it. When he was asking, the two presidents say they were like, Samoei, answer this. I left the academics to come to politics. When I was an academician, I actually started coming up with a system of governance for Africa or Zambia, which I call democracy. Because I agree with you. Democracy, the way it has been presented, people think it's the best form of government and everything. I don't necessarily agree with that, okay? And I won't take too much time with that, because I just want to put a certain perspective together, because the wrong things which are happening now, people are questioning the very fundamentals of government, you know? So the truth of the matter is that democracy is not necessarily the best form of government, but it helps to bring order. It helps to bring peace, so to speak. Because people have to talk, you know that. And especially Zambians, we have to talk. There's even more confusion. You get the point? When you hold our next Mingalato, we're hearing, then there will be total disorder. So it helps to bring all those things. I know that the British and the European Union are here and they love democracy so much, but I'll tell you for a fact that if you look at the governance systems across the world, you see the other countries that are not necessarily democratic, but they're more developed. You know, if you look at the Asian tigers right now, you look at China, they have really shown. If you look at the BRICS, they have really shown that there are other forms of democracy, of course. So for me, like I said, when I was an academician, I was thinking, I think we need an African type of democracy. And I was busy navigating that. I was saying, maybe democracy is African, but it's our own form of democracy. Because there's a way that we want to do things. You know, there is a way that we want to do things. But to cut the long story short, democracy, even for Zambia, is important in that you want to allow the people to talk. Yeah. When the people talk, you hear what it is that they're saying, and you bring it to the table, and you know how to govern people. You can't govern people without listening to what it is that they're saying and doing what they want. And that's what democracy comes to, you know? So there's a way that we can mix certain things and come up with something. So I think I've answered briefly what you're saying. I don't know if that's okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Am I permitted to take some more questions, or? Before you ask, Madam, I've seen President Jackson Slava would like to add something to the questions that were asked.
Good morning, colleagues. I want to respond to the question of the UPND alleging in public that they are not part of the mess that is happening in the Patriotic camp. I think we need to be very clear that we are dealing with a regime that says something else in public and does something else behind closed doors. And we need to match those words with the actions. And indeed, as they say, actions speak louder than words. Our great concern of what is happening right now in our country is that we are concerned by the assault of democracy, as President Harry Kalab alluded to. You have a blatant abuse of state institutions, where the ruling party takes a side and provides state resources to the side that they have taken. What the gentlemen that they are supporting have state security more than the elected Republican vice president. We need to question that. Sometimes equaling the state security of that of the president. Now we all know, let's not be naive, like my colleague brother said, that we want to also free our people intellectually. There is no way the police can move without the command of the commander-in-chief. We need to be open about these matters. We have seen the same behavior of the police go also to the Speaker of the National Assembly. 2 letters were met. And answering your question when you said what could be done, the Speaker of the National Assembly should have recused herself from handling this matter and saying until the final judgment is made. Simple as that. Look at the press conference of the Minister of Justice, Honorable Jack Mwigo. What was he trying to prove? The printout is a result of a subpoena before the court, isn't it?
Yes.
So if there is anything wrong with that printout, where should you lodge your complaint? The court. Go back to the court and challenge it. It is not the duty of the Honorable Minister to begin to explain to the Zambian people that it was erroneous. Indeed, he should be held in contempt because he commented on the matter that was active before the courts of law. So for us, we see also the actions of the recalling of the Registrar of Societies. And we need to be open once again because we need to restore confidence in our people that their leaders are able to tell the truth. The real reason why the Registrar of Societies was recalled, it's because it negated what they had planned in as far as the PF is concerned.
Yeah.
The list contradicted what Madam Nelly Muti, the list contradicted the actions of the police, so they were in a hurry to recall her. And if you look at the press conference of the chief government spokesperson, they exposed themselves.
Yes, that's true.
Because then they showed the nation that they were behind the recall of the Registrar of Societies. And the Zambian people, these are matters we're calling to the Zambian people that you need to stand up and defend your democracy. Democracy is bigger than UPND. Democracy is not the idea of President Hakainde Hichilema. Democracy is our idea. It's a Zambian idea. It is a people's idea. We have ascribed as a people that this is how we want to govern ourselves. And so therefore President Hakainde Hichilema must be able to respect the aspirations of the Zambian people. And lastly, democracy is not what President Hakainde Hichilema thinks. Democracy is not to bend to his will. Democracy has got tenets, enshrined, as President Kalaba said, in the Republican Constitution, not by the UPND. These are our rights that we have given ourselves. As the Constitution in fact says, we the people. We the Zambian people. It is not about UPND. It is about what the Constitution says. So we need to call the government to order. This abuse of state institution has gone too far, and we need to speak. Because if we are not careful, if we can have the police behave in such a manner, the Registrar of Societies behave in such a manner, Speaker of the National Assembly behave in such a manner, courts withdrawing decisions that they have made themselves without other parties being present, then it will be very soon when people begin to disappear in this republic. But we shall hold the fort. Like President Kalaba said, we are resolved. And we will take the government on. We will take the government on. Make no mistake, we will take the government on.
Yes, madam.
Good morning. My name is Anik Matipa from Ubuntu Forum. I would like to find out, what are your views on the NGOCC celebrating Madam Nelly Muti? Do you think these organizations should continue to operate in the country? My second question is, there's been a lot of MOUs being signed, and you yourselves have asked what are the contents of these MOUs.
Exactly.
Because we need to be in a position of knowing for ourselves and also for our generation. Have you pressed on these needs for Zambians to know about the MOUs? Lastly, I have noticed that all governments that come in do not respect the separation of powers. It is a fact. Governments that have come and gone have no respect for separation of powers. What do you intend to do in as far as separation of powers is concerned when you achieve a chance to govern this country? Thank you.
Thank you. We have the three loaded questions there on NGOCC, MOUs, as well as on the separation of powers. Is there another set of questions that can be added to this question? So that was our last set of questions. I will now allow the presidents to respond to the three items that have been raised.
Yeah, but just.
Okay, I'll start. I wanted the President Kavimba to start and then I finish. Okay, I'll start with NGOCC. For NGOCC, I think we're having a meeting actually next week as women from various political parties. So I won't say much because we have a specific meeting for them. So as women from various political parties, we're having a meeting on Monday. Then Tuesday, we're having a presser just like this one, where we're going to review what we think. Because I think as women in this country, we've been misrepresented for a very, very long time. Yeah. And just like you said in your last question, the clear separation of powers in this country has always been very, very abstract, if I should use that word. And just like President Jackson Selavo said, democracy does have tenets, and those tenets of democracy have to be respected. One of them is a clear separation of power. It's not the first time that a woman is leading an arm of government. We've had Madam Chibesa Kunda, who was the Chief Justice. She led the judiciary. We had Irene Mambirima, who led the judiciary as well as the Chief Justice. So Florence Mumba as well, right? She was Chief Justice, isn't it? So we've had 2 or 3 women leading an arm of government, which is a judiciary. For the first time, yes, we have a woman leading a legislature, which we're so proud of as women. But to have a woman misrepresent us so much in this country, I think it's something that we won't tolerate, because a democracy, first and foremost, starts from that. If you're going to have the legislature now, even disregarding, the decisions of the courts, this is parliament, I'll do what I want, I'll do this, I'll do that. We shall not tolerate that. Members of parliament are elected by their representatives all over the country. So that's why the whole democracy starts from the people speaking through their representatives. So we're not going to support that because we are women. And NGOCC, they're not going to say, no, some of these things we don't know. How did you know about the speaker? As women in this country, we've been violated day in and day out. Some of those things have been touched, but have not gone into details because we said the issues affecting women and the speaker and NGOCC and many others, they are too grave to be discussed at this press. I don't want to, to cloud, this presser. But Monday next week, we've got a meeting of women from various political parties. These parties you're seeing here and others who are not here. Then on Tuesday, members of the press already are being invited for that presser. We'll have a press and we're going to just talk about the state of women and politics in the country. Thank you so much.
We now have President of the Christian Democratic Party, Dr. Dan Pule, also to make his remarks. Mr. President, sir.
Thank you. I think the first thing I want to say is that we totally agree with this position that as political parties, that as political parties, the diamond. That as political parties, we are very concerned about the efforts by this government and all the 4 wings of government, including the legislature and the judiciary, that are supporting this president to do wrong things. Okay? I was in Choma, where we've been busy with organizing our party. That's why we missed some of those meetings, but we are here, and we are going to be here. One of the things we did was to call upon the Speaker of the National Assembly to resign. Because for the first time in Zambia, not even during the Kaunda era, did we see members of parliament exercising their rights to speak in parliament suspended. Some of us will remember Ben Mwinga. There were only 2 opposition members of parliament. Ben Mwinga, I remember very well, speaking against the government of Dr. Kaunda. I like what you said, if we didn't fear the great KK, who is Hakainde, HH. we can't fear him. So we are saying that the Speaker must resign for going against the Constitution. We have called upon the Chief Justice to resign as well, and I believe that's our position, that the Constitution of Zambia and the laws of Zambia must be respected. The second thing I want to say is that I'm thinking of our colleagues that have been incarcerated, the president of the Socialist Party and the spokesperson of the PF on those espionage charges. Let's understand that those are serious charges. And what we are saying that our comrades must be released immediately. We are calling upon the President Hakainde, because he's behind that, to make sure that he does the right thing, to release our comrades, President Membe, and the spokesperson of the Patriotic Front, and to stop immediately meddling or interfering with the Patriotic Front. We know what has happened. I don't want to say except we know that President Hakainde is behind it. Some of you say, no, the government is separate, like I heard the government spokesman saying the UPND is separate from government. They are not involved, but it's the same, they are the same people. So let them stop immediately in the opposition political parties. In any case, let's warn them that we are here, we are not going anywhere. We are united, and 2026, President Hakainde is not going to be president of Zambia. Take note of those words. He's going to be removed. The people are determined. The other, our comrades actually being detained. It's a detention on the, based on the Public Order Act. What has happened to President Hakainde's hatred for the Public Order Act? Our position, many of us, is that act should have been abolished completely, repealed and abolished. But even the new act, though we can reluctantly accept it, the Public Gathering Act, the bill has been presented to the President since, I believe, January. There's no talk about it. I'm glad about the Freedom of Information bill. I know there's a lot we can put in this, but that we can talk about this, the enactment of the Public Gathering Act, so that we are not, oppressed by the old act, which we know President Hakainde is not willing to remove it, because at the moment, the UPND and the government are benefiting from that. When we were in Choma, our press conference last week was delayed by more than 1 hour because the police wanted us to get permission from them to hold the meeting. And there were a lot of calls they were calling. Finally, they said, we permit you to go ahead and hold this press briefing. I said, not anywhere in Zambia have I sought, should we need to get permission from the police to hold press briefing. This is because of the Public Order Act. This also, I believe, is our position, all of us, that it should be repealed and replaced by the Public Gathering Act, which may not necessarily be the best, but at least it will be a lesser evil. Thank you very much.
Sorry, just one more. I think she asked about the MOUs.
The MOUs, yes.
Okay. They can deal with it. MOUs?
No.
I think that we are all aware that we've had many MOUs that have been announced. Every time the president travels, he comes back and says, we have signed an MOU. And even when it came to AFRICOM, there was an MOU, and you know that the opposition have been demanding to have sight of these MOUs. One of the things we need to take cognizance of is the fact that an MOU is not a legally binding document. It expresses an intention, you know, a memorandum of understanding. Our understanding is this is the way we are going to go. Now, what would be really useful for us as Zambians, we need to be informed with regard to, firstly, the content of the MOU, because these are things that are being signed on our behalf. And that's why we have been asking and saying, hey, what are you signing on our behalf? None of those MOUs have been shared with Zambians. Secondly, we have no idea. I don't think you have heard of any of those MOUs being actually landed and saying this, we went, we got this MOU, and this is what has come out of it. So continuing to mislead the public, justifying these many travels, because we've never had a president that has traveled so many times out of the country.
John Walker.
We have never had so many trips in such a short time. To justify these trips, you know, and just come back with MOUs, but not really coming back with anything substantive, is a shame to this country. And we are of the view that it's a waste of taxpayers' money, your money and my money. Yes, so we don't know what has happened with all these MOUs.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's just give a clap of applause. And presence at this press briefing. At this particular time now, I would like all of us to be upstanding as we sing our national anthem again and close the prayer. We have the national anthem, close our meeting with a prayer.